is Birgit Haugen with Superscum.com, and we are here at the Marquis Theater in Denver with Greg, guitarist of Forbidden. Now, the tour has been going on for a while. How has it been going?
Every show's been fun. Not every show's been packed, but the ones that have been packed have been really packed. And, I think this tour is doing exactly what it was supposed to do for us and help build the band back up again, because we were gone for a long time and hadn't really extensively toured the United States. So it's doing its job. It's a learning curve for us all over again. Reality is that not every city's got a lot of money.
Havoc, who is also part of the touring lineup and coincidentally a Denver-based band, they are one of the better retro thrash bands these days. What do you think of the retro thrash movement that has popped up over the years? Because you are one of the originators of the genre.
I think, first of all, I like Havoc a lot. I think they're a kick-ass band, and they've impressed me night after night with their energy. It is more, I think you're right, I think they're the better version of the retro thrash bands. A little more convincing to me, a little more violent in their delivery, because I think some of them get really lost in just trying to be accurate. And that, there's nothing wrong with that, but that's not what thrash was. Thrash was more of an expression. So the retro thrash movement, there's hits and misses within it, because it's kind of impossible for any of these bands to know exactly what it was that fueled us or inspired us to do what we were doing back then. It was a combination of things. We had a different kind of political climate. We had Reagan and nuclear war, and everything was about God or the devil, and it was simpler, but at the same time that gave us a focus, and we kept ripping
the aggression.
Yeah, the aggression. That's what it was. It was aggression. So nowadays, they're rediscovering the feeling and getting off on how raw everything was, and getting in the studio, and then we have Pro Tools, and the engineer just can't let it go. You have to move that drum around. We have to put that, so everything. The bands just get really, really
caught up.
Not even their fault necessarily, but a sign of the times, and everything turns into this perfect sounding thing that's not quite real. Not every time, but with our album, because I got to help produce it, at least I can control how much crap got moved around, and very little did.
This was one of my questions too, since you helped produce it. But for the other guys, I guess it was the first time since Green in '97 that they were in the studio. Was that a real learning curve?
Well, that's not necessarily true, because Steve, had done Nevermore and Testament.
Okay,
and
I didn't see.
And Russ was playing other stuff, and Mark is never, he's a very busy musician in multiple bands. But Matt had not been in the studio at all, so that was a little. There is a learning curve, and it's interesting, because mostly it's cool. Sometimes I get a little resentment from it, but the fact is that I never stopped being a musician, and I got to work with some amazing people. I got to work with Rick Rubin, I got to work with Sean Bevan, I got to work with Brian Joseph Dobbs, I got to work with these guys who I learned a ton from, and I'm always there in studio. So with this record, I was the only person out of every single one, not just the band, not just our Tim Narducci, who was my co-producer. I played with him in another band, Spiral Arms. But I was the only one who was there from the beginning of the whole process to the very, very end of it. And nobody knew what that record was going to sound like. And I understood that. It was very weird. It was a weird thing. It's like, well, I hope that's going to work out well. And I'm like, it'll work out. Trust me, it'll work out. There's a whole lot of trust going on there. And at the end of everything, I think everybody was happy with it. But it's not as super clinically tight, going back to what I was saying, as a lot of these other albums, by choice. Because we could have sounded just as ridiculously lined up in the ones and zeros as everybody else does. But we chose to not move everything around like that. Let the guitars breathe, let the drums breathe, bass, And as a consequence, as a result, I should say, I think maybe time will tell if that record will stand up more because of it, or if it'll just sound like it was sloppy compared to the other stuff. It sounds fucking good. The vocals are mostly the most incredible point of the album. I think Russ finally had that performance that he could have always done.
Do you think with the addition of Steve Smith, you recaptured the old sound?
Not because of the addition of Steve Smith, but he helped. Certain songs were already written. Adapt or Die and Hope Gnosis was already done before he came into the picture, and he really brought a great working relationship. Like it was more copacetic, and we worked on Skype a lot because he lives in London, so we worked on Skype like 2-3 days a week, and I'd show him stuff, and then he'd have an idea, and then I'd run back and make it into mostly a song, and then when he come to town, we'd kind of shape it more. Everything. It was just a whole lot of ping pong, and like I said, if I ever got a concussion or something, it would have all been lost because it was just all swimming around up there until I was so glad when it was done. It was such a relief because we just didn't ever have everybody in the same room all at the same time. Very rarely.
So who were the main songwriters then for that album?
Well, it's always going to be lyrically. It's always going to be myself and Russ, and then musically, it's going to be myself with Mark, and working with the drums super tight, and then Russ comes in and helps arrange that, and then Steve contributed. So, and even Matt contributed more than he ever has too. It was cool. It was like it was a more of a working relationship than we ever had before because there was less attitudes built up over years and less. Of everybody being really uptight coming in.
And everybody's older too.
Yeah. But we still, trust me, we still have stupid arguments. And, I guess that's kind of what keeps us younger. I don't know. It's like being silly about stuff is just, no one's perfect.
Speaking of older though too, you guys are by far, just a tad bit older than the rest of the bands.
On this tour?
Yes, just a little bit, yeah.
There's a couple guys. There's a couple guys. The White Wizard guys are a little older.
But does playing with younger bands rejuvenate your live performance, or is it just something that you as an established band, have to deal with in today's market?
Well, I can say this pretty convincingly. It helps. I mean, it doesn't hurt. And also, out of all the bands, no one's got more energy than we have. Physically, we move more than all of them. I think that Havoc is the next super energetic one. But everyone learns from everybody. You can't help it. No one can walk into a tour and think that they've got it all figured out, and they're not going to walk out of that tour with a trick or two from somebody else.
Right.
Bobby Blitz says, he's one of the guys. He's like, I watch what everybody does. I learn from everybody. And he was very honest about what he took from us, and we were honest about what we learned from them, and that was a really cool mutual respect because those guys are actually older than we are, and everyone. There's a guy in the 30s still in the band. No, actually two. No, there's one guy in his 30s still. Everyone just turned 40 or is over 40. So. This is uncharted waters for a lot of bands, not just our band.
You mentioned Bobby Blitz, and you guys did your first tour for the new album Omega Wave with Overkill, and now this is your second time touring in North America for your new album. How do the fans react to your new stuff?
Surprisingly awesome. In fact, I think this is good in some instances, but there's always going to be the Chalice of Blood, Eyes of Glass thing.
Why? That was one of my questions, actually.
Well, because it's our first album, and it's like if Exodus played, Less Than Violence and Bonded by Blood. I mean, it's just certain things. But Chalice and Eyes are even more of a staple in our set. Those guys can get away with skipping those. For us, we can't skip. We have to do those songs. They're really important. Some songs I've twisted into form. But we're skipping the other two albums in between, and we're not really happy about that. But right now, at this point, unless we're really controlling our environment, there's no reason to bust out anything of the obscure records. And we play 5 songs off the new record, and another 9 or 10. Yeah, another 9 off the other 2.
Who decides your set list? Is it democracy or is it dictatorship?
It can be both. It could totally be both. But at the end of the day, honestly, Russ does, because we'll argue about it and he'll agree eventually, or he'll say, no, I don't want to do that. And it's really Russ's thing because he's got to sing it, and he's such a great singer, and you have to be weary of how to take care of his voice, and he hasn't lost it once on this tour. I mean, he hasn't gotten sick, knock on wood, everything's it's like I think 3 times healthier than he was when we started a couple of years ago. He's doing really, really well, and
Cool.
That's important. That's the most important thing.
Your new album is a little bit over an hour, which is actually pretty long. Did you guys have just this much material to put out? And second, do you guys have songs or skeleton of songs that is maybe for a future release?
There's some skeletons, but we didn't use anything old. We wrote all new material, and that was a goal. The other thing was, the reason why we didn't sign earlier is because it was that was a decision on my part to say, look, because the label's making offers for before the album was done, and to me, I did not feel comfortable jumping in the studio, or not jumping in the studio, just committing to anything without every piece of music being written first. I just felt like, man, do we need that pressure, And I'm really glad we did it the way we did it. And the second we finished the last song, a phone call was made, a deal was put in place, and we were in the studio 2 weeks later.
There you go.
So it all worked out really well. In retrospect, maybe we should have waited to the beginning of this year to put the album out. But that doesn't seem to matter now because we have a whole new second wind with the video coming out at the end of the summer and a bunch more touring coming up. So because the album's strong, I think we have a second chance that other bands kind of get shoved to the side and the second cycle doesn't happen. So we're kind of lucky,
You said in an interview a while back that you don't want to push out an album just for the sake of having out an album. And newer bands doing that. They are releasing an album like every year. What are the pros and cons of waiting like 2 or 3 years even to release a new album as a band?
The only pro is that if you listen, creative energy comes in waves anyway. So if you have that creative burst that carries you and propels you, killer. But if it doesn't come right away and you're just writing something to fill a quota, that is when a band loses itself. And it happens more often than the other way around, especially today, because labels are so time sensitive and everything goes in little, increments. And back in the day it was 6 months or 9 months. Now they want a record every year and a half. And, as long as I'm personally inspired, then I'll contribute to that writing. But hey, the other guys can start writing. Right. And if I want to start writing, I'll start writing. I mean, that's just the way I am. I play music all the time. I play other kinds of music. I'm not metal like 24/7. I can't do it. Yeah. I just can't. I can't. I got to play with some rock and I got to do some different stuff. But I'm committed to writing a Next Forbidden record. I really want to do that. Nice. But I need to pick some subjects out there to write about, because I think about what I want to write about first before I actually start riffing.
A couple odds and end questions, if you don't mind. I asked Death Angel that the other day too. How about a Bay Area thrash tour? You guys, Heathen, Testament, Exodus, stuff like that?
It'd be great. I have no problem with that, except for the problem of financially, how does that become a reality? Because a couple of those bands would just go, take all the money and say, "Here, guys, for $300 a night, you can do this." And we're all family people. We're all, that is the problem. There's plenty of room on the top of the mountain, but you have to share. Right. And who wants to do that when you're on the top?
You are also one of the few people I interviewed lately who was on that 70,000 tons of metal cruise. How was that?
At the time of my midlife, it was pretty awesome. It's pretty awesome. I went with my wife, and we were probably two of the only sober people on the whole cruise. But it was wonderful to see so many of my peers and people I really look up to. And, there's friends, there's new friends. The fans felt like they weren't in anybody's way, because they weren't. Nobody got in anyone's way, and you could talk to your favorite rock star that's there or whatever. And I could see bands I wanted to, like Trouble and Voivod, and the things that I wanted to see. And Saxon. First night, Wheels of Steel, unbelievable. The next night was Strong Arm of the Law, and it was really good too, but the sound wasn't as good. But it was great. I mean, just the overall, they were fucking great. And the first night too, the boat would usually go side to side. Well, this time it was going like this at night. So when Saxon was playing, it was like, whoa. And there was people trying to walk down the aisleways. And it was, it's a unique experience. And there'll never be a first one.
Right.
There'll only be the one that we went to, and there'll never be another first. So I feel very honored that we got to do that. And, hopefully, maybe this year someone will ask Demonica to do it. That'd be great, because I would love to have Hank experience that.
Well, good luck with the rest of the tour, and thanks for the interview.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much.
Just